Welcome to your Aligned as Fuck Life podcast, hosted by your girl, Shalvika. I am a life transformation coach, a wife, a cat mom, pure generator, Enneagram 3, Pisces sign, and helping you build an aligned as fuck life is my jam. Out in this world, we believe that there are no set rules for building a life, career, and business. That we are all unique and we should be able to embrace our uniqueness in everything we do while shedding all the rules or bullshit rules one at a time. We will talk all things mindset, manifestation, healing, energetics, rituals, success, and so much more. I believe that I can have it all and you can too. Ready for an episode that will take you one step closer to your aligned as fuck life? Let's get started. Hi, hello, and welcome to another episode of Your Aligned as Fuck Life with Shalvika. And I am so excited today to welcome Rebecca to this platform. Welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Today we are going to kind of dive into this idea of true, lasting self-love. But before we get into the juiciness of the topic, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us a little bit about your journey and what got you here?
Yeah, so I lived, the first 30 years of my life as a pretty ambitious, overachieving, stressed out type of person, right? I had the idea that if I could just do everything perfectly, then I would get the happiness that I thought had sort of been promised to me as the reward for that, right? So I went about making perfect grades, getting all the awards in school, going that route, and then getting married, basically, again, doing everything that the world told me was going to make me happy. And I found myself not happy, right? I remember looking out my sliding glass door of my bedroom to like a perfect blue sky and being confused about why all I wanted to do was just pull the covers over my head, right? I didn't like myself. I never felt like I was enough, right? I was always looking to achieve another thing or improve another thing about myself or whatever. And then I started looking inward. And then at around 30 is when I had basically a very sudden awakening that completely turned my life upside down and inside out in all of the very best ways. And ever since then, so my background was in science, my degree is in science. From that point, I knew that what I was really here to do was help other people experience what I had experienced, right? And from there, life sort of unfolded in this miraculous and incredibly beautiful way. Again, not that it's not difficult sometimes. There are things, and that's something that's so important to me to communicate to people, because a lot of times people are on a spiritual path and they believe that they're they're still in that achievement focused idea, right? And they believe there's some special point they're going to reach that means like life isn't going to happen anymore, but life still happens. So I was still mopping floor and cleaning up throw up and when my kids would be sick or anything like that. I raised my two kids basically on my own, and they're both now grown. And so I've spent the past about 15 years or so working with people from all over the world and helping them reconnect with what nothing and no one can give you and nothing and no one can take away.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And I just want to add here, okay, I am an engineer by training. I quit my job at 30 to start this life coaching business because, again, the same thing, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
On paper, everything was really, it was not fine. It was like better than fine, right? It was really good. And there was this deep sense of unhappiness and
Yeah.
discontent that just kept gnawing at me. And
Exactly.
yeah.
And I see that so much in the people that I work with, right? Where their life, according to other people, their life is great.
Absolutely.
Their life looks great from the outside, and yet they can't shake this sense that there's something more, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly what led me to do what I do, right? Like help people build. And
Yeah.
like we were talking like before we started recording, that's one of the things that I am aiming to do through this podcast is to kind of open people up to the possibilities. Because like I think most of us did not grow up with role models who weren't successful if they didn't follow the checklist life, right? Like for the longest time,
Exactly. We get
yeah.
taught that, if you veer away from that, who knows what could happen.
Exactly.
It's
exactly.
not, we're taught to be relatively risk averse.
Not relatively, I think extremely risk averse.
Extremely, yeah.
Because,
You're right.
I mean, like growing up, I always felt that if I were to start a business, I'm gonna stop having a life. If I do something remotely creative, I'm not gonna make any money. I'm gonna be poor for the rest of my life.
Exactly. We're given these either ors that just
Yeah.
don't have to be that way. We're handed all of these choices that aren't actually mutually exclusive, right?
Absolutely.
And so when people find out for themselves that like, oh, wait a minute, I can do what I would love doing and be financially prosperous doing that and be happy and feel free, because you're often told, like you said with business, that, oh, well, you're just going to be married to it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I told you before we got on here, it's morning for me at a time that's probably not considered super early for most people, but I might not necessarily even always be awake at this time, right?
Yeah.
I have that level of freedom.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So let's come to what we said we would talk about, which is true lasting self-love. And I just want to know where do you think that really comes from?
So I would love to, part of the answer to that, right, is the misunderstandings that people have about self-love. Right? So most people approach self-love as, this idea of like, yeah, I like myself pretty good. I like myself. I'm good.
Right.
I'm blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And I'm pointing to something that's so much deeper than that, right? So the self-love that I'm talking about is a connection with and a conscious awareness of the infinite, boundless, all-embracing, all-encompassing, unconditional love that is available to you in every breath, no matter what you might be doing, no matter what judgments you might have about yourself, no matter what, right? Yeah. So most people approach self-love from this sense of, well, I need to like build myself up so that I'll like myself better, right? Make the things about me be more acceptable to myself. Yeah. And the kind of love I'm pointing to embraces you warts and all, right? It's not contingent on anything at all.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly powerful.
It is, yeah. And I feel like it is so messed up how the message is perpetuated about self-love. And I mean, it fucking riles me up when I hear people like spiritual teachers, coaches talk about, think only positive thoughts and,
Oh, yeah, that's such a big one.
And I'm just like, no, you're asking me to deny a part of my humanity, my humanness, when you're telling me to just think positive thoughts. And and you're just brainwashing people into it. It's like a cult. It's
Exactly. Exactly. And
uh,
that's what part of, I love that you mentioned the thing about, that toxic positivity and bypassing and everything, right? Because when I say self-love, what I'm including in you is every thought you could possibly have.
Yeah.
Every feeling you could possibly have, every emotion that could possibly be experienced through you, right?
Yeah.
All of that is included in that. So there's no such thing as, oh yeah, I love myself, I gave myself, I'll tell you the other thing that riles me up is this idea of self-care, right, in service to self-love, which is actually things that aren't nourishing to you, right?
Yeah.
And it gets promoted to women a lot, this idea of have a glass of wine as some self-care or go have cocktails. And I'm like, that's not true love, right? That's a different thing. That's let's escape a little bit and feel better, right?
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as tapping into this true, complete self-love that's always there. It's always waiting to embrace you, but then saying, oh, but I need to think a certain thought. Oh, but I need to have a certain feeling. Oh, I'm not allowed to be angry. Oh, I'm not allowed to be sad. It's not that at all. Yeah.
I think the minute you say I need to, I have to, or I should, I think that's a pretty good point for you to just stop yourself and ask, like, why? Like, where does that come from?
It is. And people fall into that for a simple reason, right? We're conditioned to believe that what creates change is dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're conditioned to believe that and the truth is we are expansive beings. We are always expanding and growing and blooming into something more and something new, right?
Yeah.
So that urge is natural. I understand people having that urge, but the misunderstanding comes when there's the belief that the way you get there is through first judging or discounting or ridiculing what's there. And something I love to say to illustrate this to people is that a flower doesn't burst into bloom by judging the bud as wrong. Right? Yeah. So people tend to think, well, if I love myself completely as I am, well, then what is my motivation to change?
Right.
I won't ever get something more. I won't ever experience something more, be something more. And it's like, oh no, sweetheart, you will 1,000 times more by the foundation for that growth being love, right? No. Dissatisfaction isn't a true foundation for growth any more than it is for, again, when you look around in nature, a flower doesn't think that it's wrong while it's only a bud. It's not sitting there thinking like, oh, if only I would bloom, I'm no good like this. It just blooms, and it's the same for people.
And I think that's such a testament to the way we are raised. And I think that's irrespective of where we come from, like what part of the world geographically we're from. I feel like we are so used to being shamed or screamed at or, negative reinforcement to bring about a change, that's what we start believing to be true about ourselves, right? Like,
exactly. And you're right that it crosses cultures 100%, right? Yeah. That it's just it seems to be this basic human assumption that that's how something changes,
Yeah. And I may be wrong, but I read about this tribe in Africa where if a kid like messes up, like makes some mistake, like all the elders kind of gather in a circle and they make him stand in the center and they praise him. I don't remember.
I don't remember the details either, but I know what you're talking about. And I remember thinking, that's the way. That's how we build this foundation of love, and love moves things forward. Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like our ancestors knew that, right? Like, we come from that. And as we have progressed in the name of, capitalism and globalization and all of these things that are happening, we've kind of forgotten that connection. Like, I see that even in business, right? Like,
because if you don't assume that people need negative reinforcement, right? If you don't build that paradigm, then it's much more difficult to exploit or enslave people, right?
Exactly.
If
Absolutely.
everything's built on, we cultivate this beautiful foundation of love and everyone blooms freely as the light that they truly are, then who's going to come, be in your factory,
Yeah, and then if everyone loves themselves, who's going to buy the products? Like,
Exactly. They're not going to need the products. They're not going to be willing to be taken advantage of. They're not going to stand for being exploited. So yeah, it's a really, and that's what is, I think some people don't realize is how much it's a radical act that puts a chip in this entire system when they let themselves really receive the fullness of the love that's actually available to them.
yeah. So, for someone who's listening, right? Like, how do you go about it? Like, someone who's starting on this path.
Yeah. So, and that's what's funny about it is it's so, because it is always there with you, right? Because it's right under your nose, because it's closer than your breath. Everything that I walk people through with this is always so much simpler than they expected, right?
Yeah.
So our mind has been conditioned to complicate everything and to believe that, in particular, that anything that has a big payoff, for example, is going to, like have a lot of steps or take a long time or be complicated.
Yeah.
And it's not. So would you be willing to sort of walk through something with me right now?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, okay, great. And then everyone listening can play along. So just take a moment, just take a nice deep breath. And just give your breath permission to do whatever it needs to do. Just bring your attention right into the center of your breath. And just let yourself observe. Just let yourself follow your breath everywhere that it goes in your body. Just let your breath take you on this little journey. And then bring your breath and your attention right into the center of your heart. And now bring into your mind something that you've judged about yourself, something that you think needs to change or improve, or maybe it's something you regret having done in the past. Whatever that judgment is, notice that when it comes into your attention, there's a knee-jerk reaction to do something about it, to fix it, right? There's kind of a discomfort there as you notice that judgment. So just give it some space now instead. Instead of rushing to do anything with it, just let the discomfort of that judgment expand. Bring your breath right into the center of it. And then just ask a simple question. Does love love this? Does love love this? And asking that question not to get a yes or no answer. You don't even have to get an answer that's in words. Just let yourself feel. Just let yourself experience what you receive when you bring your curiosity to question the presence of love. Does love love this? Is love present right now in the midst of this judgment? Is love present right now in the midst of whatever I'm experiencing? Is love available to me right in the center of this breath? Just with curiosity, ask any or all of those questions and just see what you notice, see what you experience. And so what do you find? How do you feel now?
I'm going to give myself a big hug.
Good. So go ahead and just feel that. Let yourself receive this big hug through your whole self, through your whole energy system. So, and this is what I meant about some of these misunderstandings. Most people think that in order to have full self-love, that some of what's part and parcel with that is that you would have to eradicate all the judgments you have about yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not that. It's that the love is present and available right in the midst of anything, right while you're having a judgment about yourself or anything.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And so the key piece to it is the curiosity and the willingness to notice it and receive it where it's already present.
And I think for that, it's very essential to take the time to slow down and bring that awareness. Because I don't know if you noticed that in your work, but I felt like COVID gave the world this pause, right? Like the lockdowns gave time to people that they didn't know they had. And then suddenly a lot of people started exploring themselves and their thought patterns and like life patterns and, you know, how they're operating. And I think that is so lacking in life today, like just that space and time to inquire with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to even take a lot of time or space, right? It can be once you've, now, it's funny to say this because on one hand it does and on another hand it doesn't, right? So it can genuinely be helpful to carve out that, you know, solid week where you go on retreat and you really, right, dive into it. And then, but then in your day-to-day life, you don't have to wait for that. One of the things that's a big part of my work with people is integration and embodiment, right? I help bring them through, how does this play out in your daily life? How do we bring this how do we bring that stillness and that spaciousness from the meditation cushion to behind the wheel of the car driving? How do we bring it from the meditation cushion and the yoga mat into all of the nitty-gritty of daily life? Because that's where it really hits home. That's where it really matters, right? You know, you might be able to get quiet in the middle of meditation, but then if that doesn't translate to anywhere else in your life, you're kind of missing the full benefit of it, right?
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think this is very interesting because I think that's the idea that is sold to us all the time, right? That you need to be doing this, like you need to be meditating, and then again, there is a lot of attachment of shame and guilt and judgment, and it's like a spiral that you go down on, that I'm not able to take that time, I'm not able to do this. But then if you were able to integrate that into everything that you do, right, then it's just a part of who you are.
Exactly. And it changes the whole game, right? And that's part of what this true level of self-love is that instead of this constant, like you said, this shaming of what I should be doing, what I need to be doing, what I ought to be doing, that there's this embracing of you exactly as you are, exactly who you are, exactly where you are. And what happens then is something magical, right? What happens then, and I've watched it happen in myself, I've watched it happen in so many clients over the years, is that love now starts to sprout, right? So all of those things that you thought you needed to do or should do just happen naturally because they're acts of love to yourself. They are ways to nourish yourself. So what I always encourage people toward is, you know, because you can do any particular thing from all different energies, right? You can meditate every day as an act of violence to yourself, right? If you're forcing yourself that you have to do it and you're going to be nasty to yourself if you don't, right? So it's all about doing something, doing whatever as an expression of your state of being rather than as a way of being in pursuit of that state of being. right? So for example, like even just something as simple as physical exercise, somebody
Right.
can be doing that as a violent act to themselves because
Yeah.
they are using that exercise in pursuit of a perfect body or blah, 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 or whatever they think they're pursuing, versus
Right.
doing physical exercise naturally as an expression of the love that you hold for your body exactly as it is, and your body is asking to move, and so you nourish it by moving. You see?
Yeah, yeah. And
And that it can apply to anything.
that's exactly what I was gonna say. That this has a ripple effect on all areas of your life, like right, like whether you're someone who's creative. Because I've noticed that I mainly work with creative cycle breakers, right? And I've noticed that the biggest struggle for a lot of them is to bring in consistency for their craft, right? Like so if
Right.
you're a writer, to just go ahead and write every day, right? And I think like that's something that I've been exploring in this past year with them, is how consistency is not an action. And that's what we are always told,
Exactly.
that
I
it's an
find
action.
that consistency takes care of itself
Right.
when the love is really present.
Absolutely, absolutely. When your connection to yourself is secure and safe, right? It automatically happens. And that shows up in all parts of your life. It shows up in how you show up in your relationships, in your career, in your creative endeavors, in, of course, your relationship to yourself and everything that you do when it comes to yourself. And it's such a ripple effect all over.
Absolutely. There's nothing that it doesn't touch.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's your relationship with you, if we're talking about this self-love, is the one thing you can never escape. You take you into every career, every relationship, anything that you could possibly experience. Who's there with you?
Oh
You.
yes, that's
Yeah.
honestly that's one of the first questions that I always ask anyone I start working with. Like, who do you think is the most important person in your life?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how most people don't even think of themselves. And I'm like, you're the only person who's definitely gonna be by your side till the day you draw your last breath, no matter what you do.
Exactly. Well, and like we were looking at earlier, it's another piece of why, again, it's liberating for yourself, but it adds one more little brick to liberation from this whole system. Because if people are conditioned to not think of themselves, then you know what I mean? Now it's easier. Now it's easier to tell you, oh, put one in for the team and and stay late every day at work because you're the last one that matters.
Yeah. And it serves all narratives, right? It serves patriarchy, it serves capitalism, it serves all of these things, because when you're taught that this is the role that you have to play, even in families, right? This is the role that you are supposed to play as a son, as a daughter, as a whatever, right?
Right.
And it's just
if you're already part of any marginalized group, then you're already receiving all of these external messages that tell you that who you are is not enough, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes so much easier to for your own thinking to fall in line with that, because you have this constant source of validation of that thinking of yourself as less than or not enough. So especially for people who are part of any marginalized group, stepping into this full, complete, unshakable, untouchable self-love is, like I said, it puts another chip in that whole system.
Yeah. So, okay, let me ask you something, because it's something I have personally experienced. But what do you think are some side effects of true lasting self-love? Because I think, people around you are not used to you taking up that space.
Yeah, exactly. Side effects may include So the beautiful thing with the side effects here is that, it's not like with a pharmaceutical ad where it's like your arm could fall off and you die and you have headaches every day or whatever, which there's not really an upside to. The beautiful thing about the side effects in this case is that they are things that only seem like side effects to the pushed down version of you, to the suppressed you. As you really live into them, you'll see that they're actually more of the good effects, right? So, for example, you might put up with a lot less nonsense out of people, right?
Exactly.
And that's something where, and I'm so glad that you brought this up, because a lot of people conceive of living in this state of love as like something that would make you become a doormat. Right? Like, oh, well, if I just love everything and I'm so woo, and they think of it as this very fluffy, ethereal thing rather than something that's A, incredibly powerful, and B, never excludes you. So I see a lot of people being like, oh, I want to be all loving, and they think that what that means is just giving everyone else their way all the time.
Right.
And I'm like, that's not what love is. That's not what love is. Love includes you, and it brings harmony, right? And sometimes harmony, if what we've been conditioned to believe is right for us or that we're supposed to do, means something that's actually disharmony, right? Because if you're getting walked all over, that's not harmony.
That's not harmony.
Right? So if that's what's comfortable to your system, if that's what you're used to, and you've been taught like this is how you live, and people are going to be mad at you otherwise, then it might to part of you it's going to feel initially uncomfortable. Right? But that right after the discomfort, it's going to feel so liberating and so nourishing.
Yeah. And I've experienced that. I think a lot of my clients have experienced that. Like friendships kind of ending, people walking out because you suddenly started taking up space and you have changed, right? And you are, like you said, you're not a doormat anymore. And sometimes people just can't take it. And I honestly look at it as you actually making space for more soul-aligned relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah, other people come in. So that's the thing. Like, there are people who have come in and out of my life, right? So my natural way of being is prone to fits of giggles a lot, right? Just because there's that much delight available all the time. And if somebody feels like their life is always heavy, it can be uncomfortable to them. It can be annoying to them for you to feel light all the time, to feel happy, right? So it's all a matter of what people are comfortable with. And I remember being on retreat one time in Bimini. So we're out on an island, we're on the beach, and one of my clients was concerned about this idea of exactly what you said of, right? Well, like, what if I tap into all of this infinite love and then I'm just like, I'm absolutely intolerable for people. And I guess because we were out in the sun and it lent itself to the moment, because some of us were in like a lot of hats and everything else and some people weren't. And I told her, look around right now. Is the sun adjusting itself to each one of us? Or are each of us free to have nothing on or be slathered with the SPF 50 and the sunglasses and the hat or whatever? We adjust ourselves. And it was this real moment for her to be like, oh my God. And for years after that, she told me they can put on sunglasses. They can put on sunglasses. I'm like, exactly. They can put on sunglasses. It's not you, just be you.
I love that analogy.
That's what it is. People are really withdrawing their own light. Again, especially people who are part of any marginalized group, right? So including like women as a whole get taught, don't take up space, don't shine in the way that, right? Which is the only one I can speak to personally. right? Since
Right.
I have, I'm not a part of any other group. So,
Right.
but it applies in all cases, right? That when the world tells you that you shouldn't exist to your fullest capacity, that's something I love about Lizzo, right? Lizzo's very existence rattles people. They get wound up just that she exists and that she's not shaming herself back into some little corner or something because her existence doesn't fit their idea. She's a perfect example of they can put on sunglasses. If they don't like it, they can look the other way.
Yeah. 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 And I think, okay, so a very different kind of a question. So if you're someone who's raising humans, how do you
Yes.
raise them to be in connection with with love?
Yeah, so I can definitely speak to this one. Both of mine are grown adults now.
Yeah.
So the number one thing, because I've worked with a lot of parents over the years who come with this
Right.
kind of question, right?
Yeah, because
so
I
the
think if
first thing-
you're an aware adult, it's a very natural question that we've had to struggle to get here, right? Like how
Exactly.
can I imbibe that in
how
my
do I give my kids this? Yeah. So the
Right.
first thing is to have it more for yourself. Right? So the minute that parents get more concerned about are the kids getting it, now you're in a place that's more control based
right?
than love based, right? So every time you have that thought of like, oh, are the kids connected? Are they getting it? Are they being aware? That's when you step back and you go, you know what? Am I more connected? And am I more aware? Am I more rooted in love? And you bring yourself deeper into that, because that's the foundation of what's going to bring that to your kids, is just you living it without teaching them anything, without saying anything. What you're living is what you're giving to them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Number one. And with anyone, right? People a lot of times are in whatever kind of relationships and they want the other person to have this more. And I'm like, that starts with you having it more. So the other thing is love and freedom, right? So one of the most important realizations that I had with my kids, it was that my inclination to make sure that they were happy all the time was actually violence. It was actually hatred, right? Because for them to be happy all the time meant me controlling their experience rather than seeing them in the truth of themselves, which is the same infinite being that I am, free to have any and all experiences. So that was like this big wake-up call for me when they were very little, of like, if I think they need to be happy all the time, that's me actually trying to control them. And that's not love. That's not love. Even though it's even encouraged in us as mothers, right? That's what a good mother is. Make sure the kid is happy all the time. And that's not actually loving, because it's robbing them of the freedom to have whatever their experiences are. Okay. So the next thing I would say about love and this sense of freedom is, and again, this has to be built first as a foundation in yourself. So to the degree that you are comfortable with all of your emotions, it's going to be easy for you to be comfortable with all of their emotions, right? And that breaks the cycle, because most of us got uncomfortable with our emotions because we picked up on how uncomfortable the adults around us were when we expressed whatever emotions, right? So we got the message, I need to suppress this. So the best gift you can ever give to your children is to be so comfortable with your own complete range of experiences that you're naturally comfortable with theirs, so that they don't get the message consciously or subconsciously that needs to be suppressed. So, and that's why I say that it's in you first, because even if what's coming out of your mouth to them is, it's okay to feel however you feel, honey, they're going to feel it. No matter what you say. Okay. So an example was my youngest, is an Aries moon. So the emotions go like,
Right.
right? There's some volcano action there. And so I was able to always give my youngest that space
Right.
to pop off
Yeah.
and not have that be a problem. And
Right.
sure enough, that, my youngest is now just had a birthday and is 20 and is a gifted energy healer, is navigating. Obviously, there's still ups and downs of life,
Of
right? I
course.
mean, 20 is not an easy age.
Not an easy age at all.
Exactly. But is able to navigate those without
Right.
making themselves wrong,
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So, is there something that you would like to add before we wrap up? Is there something that you feel you want to share?
I would remind everyone that who you think you are, that what you truly are is something other than anything you could ever think that you are. So whatever you think that you are in any moment, that's always going to come and go.
Right.
Right? So the love that I'm pointing to is something that transcends any identity that you could think that you have, or any identity that can have an opposite, right? Because that's what pulls people into wrestling with things, right? Is that sense of identity. It's, well, if I feel this, then what? This means something about me. It means I'm a failure. It means whatever, right? So all of that meaning that gets brought down to this root of your identity, if you start to address things from there, there's just a deep unraveling that can start to happen very easily when you start bringing love into those places. And again, by love, I mean not the emotion love, not love that can have an opposite, but that boundless, unconditional love.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you it's been such a treat to be here with you.
I know. Okay, one last question. I forgot to ask. I asked this all of my guests. What is one book, movie, podcast that you would definitely recommend whoever is listening to this episode? It can be connected to self-love or not. I mean, something that just talks to
the
you.
Movie Moana. You have to see it. You have to see it.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch it.
Get back in touch with me after you watch it, because it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful in so many ways.
I will. Yeah, I've seen videos of Dwayne Johnson
way
singing
more
the
to it
song
than that.
to his daughter, but I've not seen the movie. But I'm gonna do that. I'm sure. And whoever's listening, if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to connect to you, do you want to share how
my
they can
first
get in
and
touch
last
with
name?
you?
So it's RebeccaQuave.com. I'm sure you can link this somewhere, right? Yeah, so I'll let you do that instead of me spelling it out, right? I'm on TikTok.
I will put it in the show notes.
The same for Instagram. It's at the Rebecca Quave.
Yeah.
And I've put a couple things on YouTube recently, but there's not a ton on there. But if you're on YouTube, you can. There are some full length sessions that I've offered recently that I've put up there as well. Yeah, one of them is called Money Delight, that a lot of people are having fun with, completely shifting your relationship with money. So, yeah, that's another.
Interesting. I'm gonna check that out.
Maybe.
Yes, maybe we can talk about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so grateful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in today's episode. If you absolutely loved what you heard today, be sure to share it with me by leaving a review on iTunes so that I can keep the good stuff coming. And if you aren't already following me on social media, come soak up some extra inspiration and send me a hello on Instagram by searching @ShalvikaP. Also tagged in the show notes. I love and adore you so much, and I will talk to you super soon. In the meantime, continue building your most authentic and aligned as fuck life. Ciao!